Today on Nerd and Normal, one of the most used devices in your life is your phone. Is it time to get a new one? And what should you look for when it is?
Welcome to Nerd and Normal with Matthew and Gareth, opening your mind to the world of technology. So let's get started.
Matthew, how are you today?
Not bad, Gareth. How are you doing today?
Always well, and always so much better after I've finished talking with you.
Not beforehand.
I end up not knowing what to buy, and today it's a really hot topic. It's to do with phones. When was the first mobile phone developed, my dear friend? Of the smartphone variety, not the brick that you used to be able to buy that you had to put over your shoulder and pull out, because we had access to those in the early 1990s. But when was the first phone?
The first smartphone actually started being around the early 2000s was the BlackBerry and the Hip Top. They were the first of the ones, and the Microsoft Windows phones, the original ones as well. And it's amazing how technology has moved on from these original phones that had little screens and little keyboards as well.
Can I butt in and be rude?
You may as well.
You said the BlackBerry.
The BlackBerry.
I was under the impression, because, I love collecting trivia. I was under the impression that in 1999, Samsung developed the SPH-WP10, which was the first smartphone developed way before Apple. And one other addition, there was actually, I have one on my wrist, so this little wrist telephone, Apple phone, 1931. Dick Tracy was the first to have one. You were saying you were going to give me this.
That's fictitious stuff for some of that, but
but so's mobile phones.
But it's amazing just how far we've come in the last not even 20 years. We've come from where we were with a tiny little screen with a tiny little keyboard you can barely touch to where we are now with phones that can fold out and become the same size as a tablet. And for me, I'm never a BlackBerry user or a Hip Top user or those sort of things. I started first up with the iPhone 3G when it came into Australia. Prior to that was the old flip phone for me. But out of all the smartphones at the time, for me it was the Windows Phone. Because they've been working on doing smartphones and smartphone-like things since the late 1990s, and they've got a pretty good way of doing things. Unfortunately, the Windows Phone didn't last for too long.
Why?
Because it was a very closed system. So it got released, the original Windows Phone got released around about 2002, and then it slowly got built up until 2010 when they killed it. The reason why it got killed is because it didn't have a lot of support from developers. In the case of both Android and Apple, which are the two that still exist these days, they both have huge support from developers. So people can write their programs for them and make them available easily. Unfortunately, Windows, you've had to go through a multitude of different hoops and use the special Visual Basic system to work on the phones on a Windows-based phone. And so developers said, no, not going to do that. So they focused on the Android or the Apple side of things. But they were newer phones when it came to technology, as opposed to the whole sort of established situation with systems that we had with Windows.
It's amazing, you're right, about the technology, how quickly it's almost advanced in a geometric progression, how quickly it's developed, because I meant what I said a moment ago. I can remember back in the early 1990s, the first real effective mobile phone. Remember the brick? You almost had to carry the phone around in a suitcase, and it was attached to a power battery that didn't last very long, and you had the thing you could put in your hand, put up against your ear. I can remember working at a radio station, which will remain nameless, because the person who is now the late PD of that radio station, he used to like to show off and say how important he was, because he'd bring, in our staff meeting, he'd bring this brick and whack it on the table and try and make calls during our radio session when he really was just showing off. Oh, look what I've got. I've got the latest in mobile phones. Now, as I said a little while ago, and I held up my thing, the phone is on my wrist. I mean, the technology is just unbelievable.
And the advancements keep on coming. You look back at the original iPhone and the original Samsung Android phones, where they had a couple of buttons here and there. Now there's really only a volume up, volume down button, and maybe another button to work the camera or something else. The other buttons are all gone. We're stuck now with just a flat piece of glass that hopefully we don't break, and trying to do it all by sight because you can't feel anything.
Yeah, my think from memory, my first real purchase with a mobile phone was the old Nokia. You remember the Nokias? They were made, in one of the European countries, Finland or Sweden or whatever. They were really the pinnacle of mobile phones. And now we've got Samsungs, we've got Apples, we've got Sonys, we've got Pixels, we've got la, 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 la. How do I know what to buy?
Well, these days it comes off what you're used to and what you're sort of the ecosystem you're living in. So back when smartphones were starting out, I always said the same thing to people. Buy a Windows phone to start off with. They were simple to use. There weren't many apps to get confused with, but they were nice big screens and nice big squares all over the place. You could find what you're after quickly and use it, and then from there you can progress to something else. However, these days you only really have Android and you have iPhone.
Apple.
You don't have anything else. So it comes down.
Sorry again, really interrupting. Is there an iOS system that is not just Apple, or is it only Apple?
It's purely Apple. Only Apple has the iOS system. And right now, Apple is the largest mobile phone seller in the world. They're outstripping all the other manufacturers. There are more Android phones in the marketplace.
Yeah, 1,300 of them.
Yeah. But the problem is that's a very saturated market. So Apple themselves have that one niche. They have their own system that they control, and that's where all of their sales go to for that, whereas Android split over a multitude of different providers. And every one of these different providers, different companies that make the phones, do things differently. And they're given that control by Google.
You would like your mobile phone, I'm sure, as someone watching both of us now, would like their mobile phone to do as many things as possible. You'd agree with that?
I wouldn't say as many things as possible. You don't want them cooking your food for you just yet, but
well, no,
what you want to try and do.
That's next year. But in other words, do more than just make a telephone call.
A lot of cases, yes. There are some people who want to try and play games on there to occupy themselves. Taking photos is a big thing. Photos is huge.
What would you consider to be the near most advanced nation currently, technologically, in the world, right now?
The one that wants the best of the best all the time, the most advanced things, is usually Australia. We're the ones sort of jump in and want the best of the best.
Well, that's not quite the answer I expected. I would have thought the most powerful nation other than China in the world right now is the United States of America. And you'd think with the mobile phone development and Apple coming out of the United States of America, even though they're made in China, be that as it may, moving right along, you would think the leader of the free world, the president of the United States of America, would have the very latest in technology at his fingertips. Well, let me share with you what President Barack Obama, when he was the president, 2 terms in a row, he had to say about his experience with mobile phones.
Look, I was this cool high-tech guy when I got there, right? And I was the first president to have a BlackBerry. And then finally, this year, they said, good news, Mr. President, we're going to give you a smartphone instead of a BlackBerry. I thought, all right, this is cool. I've been seeing Malia and Sasha doing all this. Michelle's got 3 of them. She's texting and all this. So I'm excited. I get the thing, and they're all like, well, Mr. President, for security reasons, there's a great phone, state-of-the-art, but it doesn't take pictures. You can't text. The phone doesn't work. You know, you can't play your music on it. So basically, it's like, does your 3-year-old have one of those play phones?
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't have a play phone, nor can I use the phone I've already got because it's too advanced for me, hence the reason I like talking to you. So a straightforward, off-the-cuff question, if he hasn't got one, what do I buy? Do I buy a smartphone, which is all the other brands, 1,300 to 1,900 of them, or do I buy an Apple? Which do I buy and why?
So because you're already established with a phone, you stick with what you've already got. I would never say to somebody, change what you've got. If you're living the Apple world, you stay Apple world. If you've already got an Android, you can stay with different Android manufacturers, but you've got to be aware that they all change the way things look a little bit. And that can modify the program you use for your emails. It can modify the way the settings look. They all can sort of tweak it a little bit. So for me, I always say the same thing. If you've lived in the Android world, try and stick with either the manufacturer you're with now, or look into either the Google phones or the Samsung phones. If you're living in the world of Apple, your selection goes down hugely. You're then looking at what you're looking for in terms of the phone. And it's what size screen do you want? The cameras do you want? The capacity you need? There's all these different questions that need to be looked at depending on where you already are currently.
Why are Apple and Samsung phones the screen size? Why are they growing?
It's down to, I think, people doing more content viewing on the phone. So rather than using your phone as a phone or a text message machine or even emails, they're watching movies, TV shows, they're playing games on them. And for that, you see people that used to have their phones right in their faces when they're doing things. These days, they want to be able to hold their phone further away because their eyesight's getting worse. They can't see things quite as well, so they want a bigger phone.
Thank you. Yeah, ha, ha, ha.
It's the reason why you have these fold-out phones. You can get a phone now from Samsung that flips out to the size of a tablet, which is ridiculous.
So, because the technology has allowed us with a mobile phone now to do a multiplicity of things, especially take photos, and people have a choice when they buy a camera to take good photos to buy one of the best, one of the Canons or one of the Nikons or whatever. But the mobile phone, the camera technology in the phone is now so good that it's almost as good as using a fully framed digital high quality camera. So how important is the camera in the phone as far as you're concerned as a technology expert?
So when it comes to a actual dedicated camera versus a phone, it will never be able to match it, a good quality camera, because the cameras in the lens in the camera can have optical zooms. It actually moves the lens in and out, which gives it a much better range of zoom ability, and also the actual sensor chip inside of the camera, they can be bigger, so it allows for more resolution. So for a photography expert, for a person who loves taking photos, they're always going to prefer to have an actual proper camera. But for the happy snaps, I look at my first digital camera that I bought myself was a Canon Easy Shot many, many years ago. It took 4 megapixel cameras, and I thought, oh, these look fantastic. These days, a phone well exceeds what it could do. Just basic phone, the cheapest of the cheap phones, take a better photo than what that digital camera could back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So when it comes to taking photos, it comes down to whether you want to pretend you're a photographer and take the best quality photos in the world, or if you just want to take happy snaps of your family running around doing things.
So is it false advertising when you look at the various phones on videos and they are trying to sell you one, and they argue that the phone's camera is so much better than all of the other mobile phones? This camera will replicate things in a way that you can't believe how good the quality is. Is that phony advertising?
It is, but it isn't, because they're now using AI to help with the whole making the photos and the videos look even better. So while the sensors are getting better in the cameras and the lenses are getting bigger, you can see on the back of things like the new iPhones or the new Google phones, the new Samsung phones, the bump on the back of that phone is getting bigger and thicker because they're putting better quality lenses in there. But the problem is, while they're getting better, it's never going to match what you can do with an actual digital camera.
So in choosing a mobile phone, be it an Apple or a non-Apple, should I approach, like you said last week with the computer, approach the store that's going to argue the best, go prepared with knowledge as to which camera I choose? This is assuming I haven't become totally hooked on either Apple or smartphone.
Yeah, if your main priority is taking photos and you're willing to switch environments to go from Apple to Android or vice versa, you do have to do research onto what the quality of the photos that those cameras take inside those phones. Because the salesperson's going to say, oh, this has the best photos it takes in the world, because that's what the representative from the company has said. Go and push this. They'll have photos that they've printed off, or they'll have photos on screens that I can show you. Those photos are taken in the best possible environment for that camera. Where if you look online at different review sites or different camera sites that specialize in reviewing phones for this purpose, they will actually have got these same phones in the same locations taking multiple shots, and they'll say, in this environment, this lighting environment, this phone's better, in this one, this one's better. It comes down to, again, the purpose of the camera on the phone.
In the marketplace today, I would suggest, or I would argue, that Apple versus Samsung is the two big competitors with each other, Samsung and Apple. Now, I know everyone is going to be fully aware that one of our big telecommunications companies had a big issue with the 000 calls problem a month or so ago. I've been led to believe two of our largest telecommunications companies have said they're not going to give access to the Samsung because it won't dial 000?
There are some Samsung phones from a few years ago that are going to be blocked on the Optus network and the Telstra network at this point in time. It's down to the support that they have for the phones with the Vodafone network is actually making them do this. It involves from 2017 the Galaxy J5, from 2017 also the Galaxy A7, and also the Galaxy S7 Edge, which is an older phone now, but still highly popular. Those phones and other phones as well will be blocked from being able to get used on Optus and Telstra networks later on in November because they can't ring 000 on Vodafone networks.
So in other words, that particular model won't be able to make calls at all in either of those networks. Not at all. It just won't work.
That's right. It's a case of anyone who owns those phones should have been already, sent a text message from their provider, from Optus or Telstra, or even Vodafone saying, hey, your phone's going to stop working on the 20, whatever it is of November. You must buy a new phone before then.
Okay. And will you put that information in the below, which models they were?
Without a doubt, because it's a huge concern for a lot of people. People are contacting me, it's asking, hey, I've got this phone, I've got this message. Is it a scam for one? But two, what phone do I buy?
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll come back to that in just a moment. Australia geographically is huge. And there are certain sections in Australia where if you have a mobile phone, forget it. Go and find a telephone box on a corner, a red one, where you can make a free call anyway. We've got 5G now. We've gone 3G or 2G, 3G, 4G, now 5G. What do all the Gs mean? And has that increased its communicability across the nation or not?
That is a very important question to always ask and to look at. So to give you some sort of background, the G just means generation. So 5G is just fifth generation of mobile phone technology of the GSM variety. So as someone who travelled between my place and the Gold Coast in January this year, I know how spotty the reception is along the Pacific Motorway all the way from Sydney up to the Gold Coast. There are sections there where you can drive for hours on end and there's no reception. Nothing at all. So if you break down, you're going to be stuck. Now, the issue arises that this is because of the way the mobile phone technology has changed. So looking back in the late 90s, it was two main networks. There was the CDMA network and the GSM network. Then along came data in the GSM network. CDMA also did some data, but GSM was favoured. Then along came 3G, third generation of mobile phones. And that's where the speed increased dramatically. And also when the distance that the signal went dropped dramatically. And it's been progressively doing this every single time. Every time there's a new generation, the speed increases, but the signal strength, the signal distance decreases. It's just down to the way the systems work.
So does that become then a requirement of federal government to build more towers across the nation?
Exactly right. And it's unfortunate that there are areas still in suburbia that do not have reception. They had it beforehand. They had it this time last year because the 3G reception reached them and they had something. But then when the 3G system got turned off, unfortunately, that reception that was just fringe disappeared completely and they have nothing now at all.
So in 2025, 2026, do I stick with a 4G phone or do I go 5G? What's the motivation for buying a 5G when we're cutting down the distance it's going to travel?
5G is just down purely to reception speed you're going to get for doing things on the internet. Again, the reason for the phones getting bigger is because people are doing more content viewing on their phone and they want faster speeds to download their movies quicker and play the games faster. And so that's where, again, the idea of the 5th G phones versus 4G is you want to try and get your data as quick as possible, excluding the fact that, yes, you're not going to have access to the distance that you need, which for a lot of people isn't an issue because when they're at home, they're able to sit on their Wi-Fi and it all just works. But when they go somewhere, all of a sudden they can't get the distance they need, the reception they need, and the issues start arising because 4G and 5G have a huge cliff. It works, it's gone. And this is where I was really cross when they got rid of the 3G because that little bit of extra distance it gave you and the fringe reception meant you could ring 000. You could make a quick phone call to somebody if you're stuck. Now you got nothing.
When you have your mobile phone on and you go into shops or shopping centres or catch public transport, trains, buses or whatever, occasionally you can still access their Wi-Fi so that your mobile device will work. Who is there a cost in that to the company that's allowing you to access their Wi-Fi? And if not, if there is no cost, why doesn't everybody do it? Because when I catch currently in Victoria, and when I catch a train from Geelong back to Melbourne CBD, there's a very large section on that train track where, forget it, don't use your mobile phone, you get no reception. So is there a cost involved in giving everyone access to Wi-Fi?
Yes, so the companies are paying for that Wi-Fi connection for you to use, but that's all built into the price of your tickets you're paying for and the price of the actual overview of the company that actually has these days. But they also have deals with certain companies to provide that service, usually via satellite transmission. I usually don't like using those sort of things because it leaves you open to people also on those networks, those Wi-Fi networks, trying to get access into your device. And this is where we'll do this in a future episode, but VPNs come in handy if you are going to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Each company that makes a mobile phone, and let's just go with Apple for a moment. Now, Apple at the moment has just come out with item number 17, and there are different models in 17 that you can buy, and they range considerably big in terms of over $2,000 for their ultimate. So if I just want to make a telephone call, if I want to send emails, if I want to get text messages, if I want to look at Facebook and occasionally look at YouTube, should that say to me, don't spend over $2,000 for a phone? Because if that's all you want to do, you're wasting your money. Is that a fair enough comment? And if so, why?
Again, it comes into uses. So, for example, with the iPhone situation with Apple, they have, like I said, a range of different devices, different prices, and different uses for each of them. So the entry point is the iPhone 17e, which is a basic phone, has all the features you'd need to do what you want to try and do, but the camera isn't that good, and the screen isn't as big as it could possibly be.
Yep, right.
But for a lot of people, that's all they need. They don't need the high-quality camera that tries to push more pixels than what it can possibly do. They don't need the larger screen to see the content. They just big enough screens they can get on there, touch what they need to touch, and make the phone calls they've got to try and make. Then you have things like the iPhone Air, which is thinner, but has a bit more power than the iPhone E, and you're paying there for the convenience of this real thin, light phone. And you start looking at the other iPhone 17s, which increases the capacity of the storage, increases the size of the screen, increases the ability for the camera to do certain things. But if you're not going to use those, why pay for them?
Okay. What determines what gigabyte size that I get? There's 200 and something, there's 500 and something, there's terabyte, blah, blah, blah. What should be my motivation for choosing one of those bigger storage capacities?
This is where things have sort of become a little bit excessive these days. So I remember when iPhones used to have 4 and 8 gigabytes of storage, and you take a few photos and the thing would be filled up with a few photos and videos, and then your games also you put on there. These days, at half a terabyte, at 512 gigabytes of storage, you're not going to take enough photos and videos to cause grief for that. The apps you're going to put on there aren't going to cause grief for that. If you end up with a phone that's so full of games and apps, it's just there's multiple different pages of screens, 12 pages of screens, that's where you're going to need the space. But for a normal person using it only installs a few games, has, say, Spider Solitaire on there, Mahjong, maybe other games as well, but Facebook, their emails, phone calls, text messages, that space is excessive.
So what's the smallest that I should ask for? 200 and something?
Yeah, 256 gigabytes is more than enough for most people.
Okay. You've mentioned apps. The iOS system, or Apple versus Android, Samsung, etc. Is there more flexibility with one of those two systems than the other? Does Apple have the opportunity for you to have more apps, or does the Samsung or the Android system, which is which?
So Android, which is the Samsung, give you more choices of apps and more ways to get apps on your phone. With the iPhone situation, it is locked down severely. You have to get your apps through their app store, which in theory are vetted by Apple and tested for viruses and problems like that. Some things do sneak through, but they end up clearing those up. And there's no other way of getting, unless you, what they call jailbreak your phone. I'm not going to get involved with that, but that's one way to get other apps onto your phone.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Android, you have the Play Store, the Galaxy Store, and other manufacturers have their own stores these days as well. And those things are multiple ways of getting the different apps on your phone. But you can also call side load apps onto an Android phone, which is where you get a text message from somebody saying, hey, check out this app I've just created. You press on the link and it installs the app on your phone straight away. No reason for Google to worry about it or anything. Luckily or unluckily, Google's locking that down next year a little bit.
Is that when Gemini comes out?
No, even before that. It's a case of they've decided that it's no longer safe letting people sideload apps willy-nilly. The app will need to be verified by Google in some way, shape or form for it to go onto an Android phone later on next year.
So does that mean if you got a Google phone from sometime next year, if you try and put on an app, it will just say, sorry, can't do?
It's what they're saying so far. Some app manufacturers who aren't in the Play Store and other stores are saying, hey, come on, we should be allowed to do this still. But at this point in time, Google's saying, no, we're going to make sure that your app has to be at least signed off by us before it can get onto an Android phone.
So would I be right? Let me see if I can say this the right way. Apple versus Samsung, or Android, but Apple versus Samsung. Would I be right in saying with an iPhone or with an Apple phone, if the person buying wants simplicity, privacy, reliability, and the Apple ecosystem, then go out and buy an Apple. But if you want flexibility, customization, choice, and value for money, then buy an Android. Would that be a simple way of which do I buy?
Pretty much, if you're not locked in any certain system, yeah, without a doubt. And I myself, I've got an Apple phone, which is the business phone. I've also got a Google Pixel, which is my personal phone, which does have more flexibility than what the iPhone has. It then means I can see
In what way? In what way? How is the more flexibility demonstrated?
So I've got access to more apps through the Play Store. I can put on apps I want to try and put on there. If I want to create an app, I have to jump through hoop after hoop to get onto my iPhone. I can create an app and just send myself an email and with a link to the app, and I can put it on the Android phone, no problem at all.
So what sort of app would you want to create that you put on your Pixel phone?
If I wanted to create an app which gave me access to, say, the podcast backend, so I can do things with the podcast, I could do that without a problem at all, including both the YouTube side of things and the audio side of things. But it's a case of I can't do that on the Apple phone at all.
Okay. I'll wave my flag. I do have an Apple phone. I have an Apple no, I don't have a desktop. I've got a PC desktop. But I have two different... I have Apple Watch and an Apple phone. And I'm used to the Apple. I know how to use it. And my Apple is an 11 Pro Max. Now, that's 6 years ago that phone came out. We're now up to 17. So I've got 11, we've got 17, but my phone still works. Am I showing good sense by saying to myself, don't buy the next generation, as long as your phone's working? Good.
That's my recommendation to everyone. As long as your phone's working, the battery's not dying on you, the screen's not cracked where you can't use it, you keep the phone going for as long as you possibly can, as long as it's safe to do so. At this point in time, when it comes to the iPhone ecosystem, I'm telling everybody, do not upgrade to the latest iOS 26. I updated it about 2-3 weeks ago. I've had no non-stop issues since then. One person raised with me about, can you block a phone call number easily? No, you can't. A feature that you can do on your phone still because you haven't upgraded to the latest one. You can do it inside your call history. You push on the number and block it. To do it on the latest version, you've got to go into settings, into privacy, into the phone section, and just jump through multiple hoops and manually put it in there. So at this point in time, yes, I would say stick with what you've got. Don't change a single thing because right now it works. As long as you're updating to the latest version of iOS 18, and you can do that, your phone is safe. Keep going.
But wouldn't there soon be an iOS 19?
No, so Apple's changed their numbering system. This goes back to, and this sort of shows the arguments between Apple and Android over the many, many years. So they both came out, both Android and iOS came out roughly at the same time in 2007. However, Apple's been sort of 6 months ahead of Android since the release. So right now, Apple is sitting on iOS 18/26, while Android is currently sitting on version 16. Now, the way it works is they won't push you to go to 26, but there is no version 29. There is no version, 19. So you'll have 18 point, I think it's 7.3 or something.
I'll tell you while you're explaining.
That is the current latest version of iOS 18, which is perfectly fine to stick with. Whereas with the Android 16 and the updates for that, it's a whole different ballgame. It comes down to manufacturers, what the providers do, and a whole range of different things. What Apple have done is, starting from October this year, they changed the numbering system. So rather than being based off how many years we've had this system going for, they're changing it now to based off what the year we're coming into is. So the latest version is iOS 26, and it will be that all the way through until, say, October next year. Then it becomes iOS 27. That way they appear to be more advanced than Android by a considerable margin.
Okay, I've just opened up that section, and what I currently have is iOS 18.7.1, and this update provides important security fixes and is recommended for all users. Above that, it says, see what's coming in iOS 26. So if I stop downloading the latest update, is that going to put my phone at risk because you're saying 26 is full of problems, or will they fix the problems?
So the version of Android of iOS 18 that you're being offered will be the latest version offered right now. It's possible they might keep iOS 18 going for a little bit longer as well, like they've done in the past, while they try and iron out the kinks in iOS 26, and there are a lot of kinks there. But at this point in time, it's unknown how long they're going to keep on doing that for, because they've got to try and move their teams from looking after the old version to moving to the new version to try and work on that.
Each update, what does it do? Does it add another layer of security, or is it only fix problems they've had in the previous download?
Usually it fixes problems for that sort of thing. With the iOS 26, the big update they want to try and get you to do, that changes the fundamental way a lot of things work on the phone. And then they release updates trying to sort out what issues that they've created through that massive change. And if there's security holes, like a Windows update, they release things too early, they haven't tested fully, or they haven't tested in a real-world environment. They release the update, it gets tested, security holes get found, they then start patching them endlessly.
Apple 11, stay with me forever. Do not stop working, because I don't want to go through all this complexity. In fact, I might have to go back to what Neil Diamond did when he spoke to us last week, and that's just write letters.
Yeah, I feel the same way sometimes too.
Thank you for your time as always. We've solved the what computer do I buy last week. We've solved we actually didn't recommend. Do you recommend a particular brand?
Honestly, for me these days, because the number of brands that are out there is huge, it's, if you're with Apple, stick with them. If you're with Android, look towards Google, look towards Samsung, look towards the current one you've got, but also check what they all feel like. Go to the shop, see if you can hold them in your hand, see what they look like turned on. Feel that. Actually touch it. That's what's important.
Good advice. And listening to Matthew and I each week, please, if you've got a suggestion of something you'd like us to cover, then send us a message in the comments below. Just say, how about covering blank?
Yep.
Which app do I buy? Now, there's a good topic.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe all the time.
Yes, ring the bell, touch the thing, and look at the things he puts below. He likes writing things below, and next week we'll try and wear the same clothes. Matthew, have a good week.
You too, Gareth. See you then. Look! See? I can do it! First take!
You're going to put that in as a blooper?
No.
Look, I can do it without a mistake. I think you should. Bloopers. Here's my blooper. It's talking about no bloopers. Listening to Andrew and Matthew and myself each week, you can cut that out as a blooper or put it in as a blooper.